time, productivity, and worth. You know that low, pervasive hum? The one that sounds like constant catching up? That's what we're naming today. And we start there because I want to acknowledge, right away, the kind of exhaustion so many of you carry. It's not always dramatic. Often, it's a soft, persistent fatigue. You wake up and your to-do list is already running the film in your head. You feel a little behind. All day, there's this sense of deficit, of not enough hours, not enough progress, not enough rest. So let's talk about the invisible script of hustle culture. It's like a well-rehearsed play we've learned by osmosis. We grow up watching it, eating it in small bites, newsrooms glorifying the 80-hour week, social feeds celebrating grind aesthetics, colleagues swapping war stories about double shifts and sleepless sprints. We internalize lines. I'm slammed. I've been crazy busy. No days off. But listen closely. Sometimes those phrases are less about logistics and more about signaling, I matter, I'm indispensable, I am in demand, right? We start using busyness as a proxy for value. How often have you heard yourself or said, "Ugh, I can't, I'm so busy," as if busyness is an honorable garment you wear to prove you deserve respect? It becomes a kind of currency, and that currency is strangely theatrical. The louder the busyness, the more visible the worth. It's performative at times and, let's be honest, exhausting. There's a subtle cruelty in it, too. Hustle culture persuades us to measure days in output. It invites us to believe that any minute not converted into something measurable is, by definition, wasted. We begin to equate rest with laziness and slow afternoons with moral failure. That's insidious because it reaches into our language, into our small daily rituals, how we talk about lunch breaks, how we defend vacations, how we pad our calendar. Even when we rest, we sometimes have to justify it. I remember a moment, this feels like ages ago, when I left a consulting role that rewarded constant throughput. I took a week off, and a colleague asked, half joking, "What are you going to do? Not work?" The question landed like a splinter. I found myself scrambling for a respectable answer, volunteer work, reading, productive relaxation, as if unstructured rest needed a defense. It was the first time I noticed how insidious the script had become. And then there's the exhaustion. Not just the physical tiredness of a long week or a late night, but that deeper, existential fatigue. You wake up already tired, and the mind lurches into a checklist. Your attention is a flickering light, never fully landing anywhere. There's a shame that follows. Shame for not ticking boxes. Shame for not maximizing time. You feel like a machine with blunted gears, still moving, but less alive. I want to put words to that, because it matters. Burnout isn't simply too much work. It's a quiet erosion of curiosity, of joy, of the capacity to be with people without transactional calculus. Little moments that once glowed, chatting over coffee, reading a paragraph that expands your mind, start to feel flat, as if someone drained the color from them. You're present in body, but your inner life is dimming, and you blame yourself. I should be more resilient, you think. But resilience is not an infinite reservoir you can dip into without refilling. Let me be blunt for a second. Busyness can become emotional armor. It deflects the uncomfortable question of whether what we do actually aligns with what we value. When you stay busy, You stay distracted from the deeper inquiry of for the sake of what? That question can be destabilizing. So we prefer bustle. It's safer. We tuck our doubts behind a mountain of tasks. There's an almost theatrical quality to busyness, too. Have you noticed this? People will schedule two things at once to look indispensable, or they'll tell a story in a team meeting about how little sleep they had, as if that's a badge of honor. But underneath, there's often a profound avoidance. Avoid fear, avoid regret, avoid the hard work of asking whether our goals are genuinely ours or simply inherited. You see, being busy can feel like motion without meaning. We optimize, we triage, we color code calendars, but seldom stop to ask whether the destination we're rushing toward is one we actually want. We become virtuosos of doing while forgetting to be. It's an elegant form of self-erasure. This is where slow living starts to look less like a trend and more like resistance. But pause. Slow living is not about being idle. It's not a romantic postcard of hammock swinging and artisanal bread that you post to Instagram while secretly refreshing your inbox. Slow living is, at its heart, a reorientation of priorities. It's asking, what if we measured success not by visibility or output, but by depth, alignment, and the quality of experience? Imagine choosing fewer commitments, but approaching them with full presence. Imagine letting boredom be a kinder cousin, an honest, necessary gap where creativity shows up. Imagine protecting your attention like the finite resource it is, instead of scattering it in pursuit of 1,000 minor gratifications. That's not small. That's purposeful. I want to be careful here. There's a tendency to romanticize slow living as a lifestyle only accessible to people with privilege, those who can afford to downshift. That's a fair critique. Not everyone can opt out of hustle overnight. We must acknowledge structural realities: bills, caretaking responsibilities, precarious employment. Slowing down is not equally available to everyone, and any conversation that pretends otherwise is dishonest. So, what can slow living look like when you can't quit your job or change your economic circumstances? It can be micro moments: a 3-minute breathing practice before you open your laptop, a deliberate pause between meetings, a small boundary: no emails after dinner. These are not grand solutions, but they recalibrate your nervous system. They reintroduce small pieces of choice into days that otherwise feel dictated by external urgency. It also means redefining ambition. I want to be clear. Ambition is not the enemy. I've seen it devour people, yes, but ambition can be reconfigured. Consider ambition as the desire to live congruently with your values, to protect your capacity for wonder, to be emotionally available for people you love. That kind of ambition is quieter, but no less radical. It's ambitious in a different register: depth over breadth, stewardship over accumulation. There's courage in saying, "This is enough." Courage in choosing the pace that lets you thrive rather than merely survive. That courage has costs and risks. Perhaps your peers will misunderstand. Perhaps your work culture will reward the loudest grinders. There may be practical consequences. But there's also a profound freedom in aligning your energy with what matters. And let's talk about doing less, but being more present. I hear people say, "I tried slowing down, but I got antsy." That's completely natural. Quiet is unfamiliar to a brain trained on constant stimulation. You will notice the twitch. The hand reaching for the phone, the mind darting to notifications. That's part of the work. Stay with that discomfort. It's in the stillness that you'll often find the questions you've been running from. Let me give a small example from my own life. A few years after leaving consulting, I began scheduling long, unstructured mornings at home. No meetings before noon, no forced agenda. At first, it felt decadent and terrifying. My mind kept filling the space with to-dos. But after a few weeks, I noticed something. My writing became less forced. I found myself thinking in longer, more generous sentences. Conversations with loved ones felt less transactional. The change wasn't dramatic overnight, but the layers shifted. That shift wasn't about being perfect. I still check emails. I still succumb to busy mode sometimes. The point is the recalibration, the ongoing negotiation between momentum and stillness. It's like tending a garden. You don't bulldoze weeds once and expect paradise forever. You return, you prune, you water. Over time, the garden yields different things. We should also talk about the language we use. It's important. Words shape perception. When you tell yourself, "I'm so busy," what do you want that to signal? When you say, "I don't have time," are you actually saying it is not a priority? Language can be clarifying if we let it. I encourage a small practice. Try substituting "I don't have time" with "it's not my priority right now," and notice how that feels. It can be discomforting, but it also returns agency. It highlights choice. Emotional balance is not an endpoint. It's an ongoing conversation with yourself. I like thinking of it as checking your internal weather report. Notice irritability, numbness, restlessness. These are signals. Numbness is not restful. It's a warning light. Rest is regenerative and enlivening. Numbing, by contrast, is avoidance. Learn to differentiate. Name the feeling. Ask it what it needs. Sometimes the answer is a nap. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's a friend. And sometimes it's a structural change that feels too big to tackle alone. Let's be realistic. Many of us are tethered to systems that reward relentless output. So the idea of choosing your own pace becomes radical precisely because it contradicts the script. And it requires small acts of courage, saying, "I can't take that meeting," or "I won't answer emails tonight," or "I'll prioritize this project and let others go." Those acts can feel risky. They demand a steadiness of inner voice. There's a lovely paradox here. When you choose your own pace, you often become more effective in the things you keep. Focus breeds depth. Doing fewer things with more presence tends to yield better outcomes, not always in ways that are immediately quantifiable, but in ways that matter. Relationships deepen. Creative work breathes. Decisions feel less reactive. I want to say something about fear because it's central. Slowing down exposes silence, and silence exposes the self. That can be terrifying. You might fear missing out, fear falling behind, fear that if you stop sprinting, your visibility will fade. Those fears are real and culturally sanctioned, but they aren't the only truth. You can be visible and grounded, ambitious and humane. The trick is making decisions from a place of clarity rather than scrimmage. There are practical gestures that help. White space in the calendar, single tasking for set blocks of time, turning off notifications, scheduling recurring boundaries like no work after 7 p.m. But these are not magic bullets. They are scaffolding. The deeper work is internal. reconfiguring the stories you tell about what success looks like and learning to be on your own side. Being on your own side is an ongoing practice. It means speaking to yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a friend. It means noticing when you start to speak in a depleted voice, I should have, I must, I need, and gently reframing, I'm choosing, I prefer, this is enough. It's subtle, but language shifts how we orient to experience. It nudges us away from relentless optimization towards stewardship of attention and energy. I often think about ambition again. The cultural image of ambition is a ladder, up, up, up. But what if ambition were more like curating a museum of your life? Selecting work that speaks to you, relationships that nourish you, projects that align with a broader sense of purpose. The exhibition might be smaller, but it's more coherent, and crucially, it's yours. You might respond, that sounds lovely, Elena, but it's a privilege. And again, you're right. Privilege shapes options. The work of slowing down must include structural shifts, fair pay, reasonable hours, caregiving supports. Individuals can make choices within constraints, but society also needs to reevaluate what it values. A culture that rewards incessant output at the expense of human flourishing is, frankly, misaligned with long-term well-being. So, where do we go from here, practically and emotionally? I want to offer 3 gentle prompts. Nothing prescriptive, just invitations you might carry with you over the next few days. Prompt 1. Notice your language. When you say, I'm busy or I don't have time, pause and rephrase. Try, it's not my priority at the moment, or I'm choosing to focus on X. See how that returns agency. Prompt 2. Protect 1 unstructured block per week. It could be 30 minutes or 3 hours. Make no plans for it. If that feels impossible, shrink it. The point is to give yourself space, to notice what arises when you stop filling every moment. Prompt 3. Practice a small boundary experiment. Deactivate notifications for 1 app. Say no meetings during lunch, or set a hard stop time. Notice not only the practical outcomes, but your emotional reaction. Any anxiety, relief, or resistance. Those reactions are material to work with. These are tiny experiments, but they're instructive. They're ways to test whether your experience changes when you allow different rhythms. And importantly, there's no binary here. You're not winning or failing at slow living. You're simply collecting data about how certain shifts feel. I also want to acknowledge grief. The grief of letting go. If you slow down, some relationships or roles may shift. That's normal, and it can hurt. Some people will withdraw, some opportunities might pass. But grief is part of the negotiation, and it deserves a seat at the table. Sometimes we mistook motion for meaning, and slowing down reveals what's been propped up by momentum. That revelation can be tender and disorienting. And finally, here's a quiet reframing of ambition I find helpful. Consider ambition as fidelity to your values, to the people you love, to the curiosity that keeps you alive. Fidelity isn't flashy. It doesn't require constant broadcast, but it is durable. It resists the ephemeral applause of algorithms and honors the everyday work of being human. We are not choosing between extremes. Most of us will oscillate, sometimes pulling into the fast lane, sometimes taking the scenic route. The skill is learning to pivot with intention rather than defaulting to autopilot. Ask yourself, when do I speed up, and for what reasons? When do I slow down, and are those reasons nourishing? Before we close, a small practice you can try right now, in this moment. Breathe with me. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Do that 3 times. Notice how your chest softens, how your thoughts may shift from edge to subtlety. This is not a cure, but it's an honest recalibration, proof that rhythm can be changed, even in small increments. I want to end where we began, with gentleness. This is not another mandate to be better, faster, or more efficient at rest. It's an invitation to be curious about the stories that run your life, to notice the ways busyness has functioned as armor, to test, experimentally and compassionately, what it feels like to slow down in the margins you can control, to speak to yourself as an ally, not as an adversary. You don't have to make grand gestures. Tiny shifts accumulate. Over time, they recompose the quality of a day and then a life. There is courage in choosing your own pace. There is dignity in protecting attention. There is deep, unobvious ambition in aligning outward motion with inner values. If you take nothing else from this conversation, take this. The work of undoing hustle culture isn't solitary. It's collective. It asks workplaces to be humane, policies to be just, friends to be honest, and individuals to be kinder to themselves. We don't have to shoulder this alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode landed somewhere, if it raised a little curiosity or friction or even discomfort, carry that with kindness. Notice it. Experiment gently. And if you're up for it, consider telling one person today that you're trying a small change. No explanation required. Sometimes saying it aloud is the beginning of real permission. I'll leave you with a final thought. Life isn't a series of productivity metrics to be conquered. It's a collection of moments, some quiet, some urgent, some mundane, that together form a strange, beautiful whole. Try tending them with less performance and a little more presence. See what grows. I'll be back next time. Until then, be gentle with yourself, breathe, and take one small step that aligns with your values today.